Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Freeman. I'm the Public Education Manager at Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. Welcome to the Cooper Hewitt Design Center. We're here while our main museum is being renovated on East 91st Street. We're going to reopen in autumn 2014 with 60% more exhibition space and circulation space and a whole new visitor experience. So until then, we're very happy that you could join us here at the Design Center. Since we opened last May, we've welcomed over 14,000 attendees in various programs for families, teens, and adults. And we'd love to thank Target for helping to make the center a reality. Tonight's talk with John Reddick is the third in Cooper Hewitt's new Harlem Focus series. Over the next month, we will welcome designers, architects, artists, and other practitioners whose work engages and affects the local community. This series is curated and led by John Reddick, architectural historian and consultant and Harlem historian. These talks are a way to highlight design issues that are facing Harlem, ranging from public art and landscape architecture to rooftop farms and urban woodland restoration. We hope that you join us for other talks in the series. Please check our website at cooperhewitt.org. John Reddick is active in architectural preservation and has written on Harlem's architectural and cultural history. He's a graduate of the Yale School of Architecture, and his love of architecture, African American culture, and history have been conveyed on numerous occasions through tours and articles he's provided for the Studio Museum in Harlem, El Museo del Barrio, the Whitney, there's so many, I have to turn the page, the Biography Channel, New York's Historic Districts Council, and other institutions. Please join me in welcoming John Reddick.
Well, thank you for this wonderful turnout. This is our third in a series of over going to be 10 talks and focuses on Harlem. I've lived in Harlem since 1980, and I feel like the Harlem I came to kind of know isn't the Harlem that's always kind of portrayed in the broader public imagination. And in tonight's talk, you'll see Albert came to this neighborhood from another country, actually, and went to City College and had a perspective on the city and his profession that really was woven through his time in Harlem. And in the series, we're going to explore other artists and designers who either have lived or worked or have had projects in Harlem that have had this broader impact on the profession. So I thank you for coming out tonight. I also want to thank Target for its support and a chance for people to really engage. I hope that when you leave tonight, you'll explore the neighborhood a little bit, maybe grab a bite or sort of explore the area. We welcome all comers to the neighborhood, and particularly thankful to City College. Apparently, there's several people here from City College, and I've been doing work on Harlem's Black and Jewish music culture. And so you're in the City College, you're in good company with Yip Harburg and Ira Gershwin and a lot of other players who are associated with that university. But I'm also particularly pleased tonight to have Albert Vecerka as my guest. I met Albert many years ago in relationship to some of his work at City College and through mutual friends. And when I started thinking about this series, he's one of the first people I thought about because his eye was really nurtured and trained through looking at the Harlem environment. And his documentation and growth as a photographer is really reflected from some of the images that he took in learning to take pictures, but also over time now have become images of the changing neighborhood of Harlem. So they'll become a historic reference to the fabric of the neighborhood. So I want to welcome Albert Vecerka.
I would like to just take a moment and thank John for inviting me, and thank Cooper Hewitt for hosting this. And thank you to all my friends and family who have been supporting me in getting here.
You want to talk about this a little bit, this first image a little bit?
Sure.
We're on Lenox Avenue, and this picture was taken what year?
2000 or 2001, it escapes me. I know it was early October on a weekend, but I can't remember the year exactly.
And it's interesting, so you see this fabric, it's a whole block of buildings between about 123rd and 122nd?
Correct.
And but maybe there was, how many buildings were occupied? Maybe 2 buildings were just getting their new windows and things.
Yeah, two buildings in the middle are occupied, and the one on the far right was under construction. There's actually a compound bucket on the stair, and everything else, as you can tell, is boarded up and in a state of disrepair.
And so this is a major commercial avenue stretch in Harlem. It had some commercial on the lower floors, residential, but you can see how tall these buildings are. They were built to the scale of the avenues, and so over time, when you look at heating and maintenance and all that, they became real burdens on a lot of the home owners. And so you see this whole derelict period, and now this whole block is all but maybe one building is.
Yeah, we'll see the image from earlier this year, actually, later in the presentation. So, photographing design, architecture, design, and art, that's kind of our topic today. Is this a little too loud? Maybe? No, it's okay? Thank you. So photographing architecture, design, and art, I feel like I get to do all 3 of those, and mostly architecture, but the other 2 as well. So just to start off, I would like to define architectural photography, and this is one of the images that really speaks volumes about architectural photography. This is Ezra Stoller's photograph of the TWA Terminal, JFK. So I think of architectural photography as really telling a story about a piece of architecture. And I've been really fortunate to work with Erica Stoller since 2002 and to kind of get insight in Ezra's work through not just looking at his photographs, but through listening to some stories about how he worked and what he liked, what he didn't like. And
I was in architecture school during this period, and he was the god of architectural photographers. And here, I mean, Saarinen really was looking to, to be sculptural in terms of like showing flight through the architecture. So I feel the photographs started to capture a lot of that. What the architect saw as an artist, sculptor, the photographer really conveyed the aspect of that in the images.
Yeah, in my kind of training years, I worked with another photographer, Paul Warshall, who actually worked for Ezra Stoller. So I have this kind of connection and
vintage.
And I remember Paul saying, Albert, Ezra Stoller really established the standards to which architectural photography is done today. And I've actually heard that from a few other people. So looking and knowing Ezra's work is, I think, very important for not only architectural photographers, but architects. And I think most architects know the pictures, and some know the name, but not all. So in telling a story about a building, photographer would generally cover many different views and many different aspects of a building. So here's another view of the TWA Terminal, probably very familiar to many of you. And then a night view, really just looking inside, and then we go inside. So this kind of narrative about the building is really what I'm also interested in. And I also remember Paul saying, architecture, photography is a visual field, right? So we, as photographers, have these visual elements, and as architectural photographers, we have these architectural elements that we use to compose our photographs. And it's very similar to a writer using words and sentences and paragraphs to tell a story. It's rather than written or spoken language, it's a visual language, and as such requires some training, both to be able to actually convey something and in a way to kind of absorb it.
And architects of the period, my father would take us to the airport on the weekend, and we'd just watch planes land and the beauty of people, embarking. And so I feel the architect and the photographer are really caught up in that sort of modern vision of American life. And so I always compare now, a stewardess in the 1960s, she was the most sophisticated woman of her time because she traveled, she was seen as independent, she's elevated really above a teacher or anybody else. And so there's an elegance in this photograph that kind of tells you what that stewardess would have been like going through that terminal compared to today where that woman's dragging a plastic bag up the aisle to collect your trash at the end of a flight. It's a very different experience compared to, and I think over time, these photographs kind of tell the poetry of both the architect, the photographer, and the time.
Yeah, it was a different way to travel in
Yes.
different time. So just a few other kind of very iconic photographs.
Again, how he relates, you're seeing the ship, you're only seeing just this, but now you relate New York to water. And people who don't New York City probably are shocked when they get to New York and we're surrounded by so much water. And he's reminding you that it's a port city and some of that history is being conveyed even in the photograph, little snapshots of what's the photograph.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's probably different now, but as somebody who has grown up in another country, you hear about New York, but it does take a while until you actually realize that it's an island. And another photograph. This is the Fifth Avenue, 43rd Street.
But you don't have the bank vaults. Is the bank vault shot in there?
No, I took that. And then the World's Fair grounds from 1964, and this just looked like a very, very seductive image. And
well, I went to that fair, and it looks like a contemporary photograph. So you can realize how much the 70s style, the 60s style, is coming forward in design and all that. Because you look at this picture, and I think most people, even the younger generation, would think it was a contemporary photograph. The sense of color and the forms.
the color is very contemporary. You're right about that. And I also decided to include this one because a couple of years ago there was an addition. There's a little theater here, also done by Philip Johnson, that's still in operation. It's called Queen's Theater in the Park, and they just had a new entrance built a couple of years ago by Keeples and Jefferson architects. And I had a pleasure of photographing that, and then looking at Ezra's picture of the same subject. So, in trying to think, well, how do we do this tonight? I decided to just select a few things that an architectural photographer would really be thinking about, and kind of look at my work and some other people's work through those things. So we're going to talk about. I wasn't sure how to call these things, but so I titled this "Ideas," and they're learning to see. We're going to talk about storytelling. You don't take a photograph, you make a photograph, and we're going to talk about perception of space. So learning to see. So this is a photograph by Wayne Source, who was one of my early mentors and influences. This is a pink couch from the 60s? From the 60s sometime. And Wayne was the person who kind of introduced this idea to me of learning to see. And here I was, graduated City College, took a bunch of photography classes. I read a bunch of books, practiced a lot. I thought I knew how to do this stuff. And then I met Wayne, who's worked for Life magazine for about 20 years and did these amazing photographs. And he started talking about learning to see.
And what year is this? When would this photograph?
This was the photograph was from the 60s sometime. Late 60s, but we met in 98. So that's when I started kind of to learn to see.
And you kind of think of like museums that would document furniture. It would have been very formal. So this is sort of French provincial piece of furniture, obviously done in the 20th century. But you start to see the little handcrafted doily to the back and the kind of plant that's in everybody's house, the little philodendron plant in the corner. So he's starting to tell you a little bit about the culture that this piece of furniture is in without really showing you all of it. He's kind of hitting at a time and a sort of income level and the kind of family that might have it, even though he's really just showing you a piece of furniture in the end. There's other clues about the culture.
Yeah, the other interesting thing that I've kind of learned from Wayne is to kind of just tell it like it is, basically, to not try to do anything really fancy, but to really, and that's also related to learning to see, to just look at the subject and try to capture the essence of it, basically. So learning to see really has multiple levels, and so one of them is really kind of looking at your subject very carefully, and this is another one of Wayne's photographs, Canal Street and Broadway, from 70s, early 70s. So back to learning to see is looking at your subject very carefully and kind of studying the subject. And I think there are two ways that I kind of find myself going about it. Sometimes I have this pre-visualized idea of what the photograph should look like, and I will go to a place to actually do a photograph that I have kind of imagined in my mind. And the other way is to just kind of look at your surroundings, and this is something that really relates to Harlem series. To look at your surroundings and look for these serendipitous moments that happen, and then be like really ready to make a photograph. This is another one of Wayne's. This is Chicago, same time period, similar time period. So the photograph looked really great. The light and the shadows and the position of the cars and the buildings, and then these two little girls ran in, and it just really made a photograph. So it also means to kind of keep an open mind and be patient and wait and really look carefully at what's happening in front of you.
Also, what is life but your shadow on the earth? And so I love that it's kind of taking nature in a way. And initially, you look at this photograph, you don't see that pattern, and then you start to realize what's that pattern in front of it. And you realize it's done with the light, and the girls have their shadows on the landscape, just the way the building's on the landscape. It's very nice.
So this is one of my early attempts to use a 4x5 camera. So I had a lot of practice with 35 millimeter, and with help from some friends, I managed to get a 4x5, and this was the first time that I actually took it out of the house and decided a state office building would be a good example, a good target for me to try to practice, and framed this shot. And I had this lens shade that came with the lens, and I thought, oh, there's gonna be some flare from these street lights. I better put a lens shade on. And not knowing what the effect it's going to make on the camera with extreme movement, I had no idea. This is not digital. You can't really see in the back of the camera what you're getting until you process the film. So needless to say, I had to go back and do this again. So
I said the other one was the first hoodie. It was wearing a hoodie.
So this is part of the early Harlem series where I really decided I wanted to show the neighborhood in really the best possible light. It was my neighborhood. I really wanted to look closer at it. And state office building, even though not the greatest building in the world, was such a Harlem landmark that it seemed like I should really...
And it is night. There's still trepidation about going to Harlem at night. So it has these photographs go into the public realm that shows night activity. You know, there's this sense of there's traffic like anywhere else in New York. You see these streams of light on the ground plane, and you're seeing light in the buildings. So you start to feel like there's a community that's animated at night, which in some people's minds didn't exist. And even when I talk about New York and think about the change in New York and how people started coming to the city as tourists, I always credit the Today Show, for example, more than I credit the change of Central Park. But the fact that Katie Couric was getting up at 7 o'clock and going to the plaza in Rockefeller Center to talk to people meant that tourists from Ohio had to get up at 5 o'clock to be in that plaza, to have a space. And I think that's reverberating across the country, that New York can't be as horrible as I thought, or I can start traversing the neighborhood. And I think this photograph, and there's some other studies, shows that night it starts to animate Harlem in the evening in these public realms. These were shot for a magazine or the Times?
No, this was just me kind of wanting to explore the neighborhood and wanting to...
But the traffic is this kind of real vitality and sense of this activity and sparkle in terms of the nightlife that you hadn't seen in Harlem images for a while.
Yeah, so yeah, both of these are probably 99, and this one as well. This is the Riverside Church. Kind of caught my eye for two reasons, because you get this canyon of a street with this incredible object at the end. And at that time, the new lighting scheme was implemented so that the tower was actually lit at night. So,
and a lot of people don't realize that Harlem was really developed around the 1890s, and it was considered for the Columbia Exposition, that Chicago got the Exposition, but New York was in competition. If New York had gotten it, it was going to be the northern end of Central Park, the southern end of Harlem, over to the Hudson River. And we didn't get it, but I realized that in talking about the neighborhood for the fair was pushing it as this visual place to live in terms of the topography and the beauty. And so all the institutions started to move up to Harlem in the late 1800s, 1900s, and they realized with Riverside Drive property, you could buy lots or get lots that would put you on axis with the grid. This Beaux-Arts, when you think about Washington, D.C., and in Europe, where buildings are at the end of a grand concourse or boulevard. And here, St. John the Divine, Riverside Church, Grant's Tomb, all pick sites on Riverside Drive, so you have these great views way to the east. And so, and revigorating the buildings when they started to light the Chrysler Building and some of the other buildings, the city was pushing it. Riverside Church started thinking about, lighting their facades as well. So you can see it's spectacular in terms of its relationship to the city. And
then just kind of I continued to work with this kind of a dusk night theme, and looked for other buildings in the neighborhood that kind of stood out. This is a little church on 8th Avenue.
Right, which was a former grocery store.
Or a former grocery store.
And a friend of mine, Karen Phillips, we always joke, Harlem can change and get gentrified, but we want to keep a little funkiness in Harlem in terms of the design. So it's someone in the church that came up with an idea about how to rework the facade. But you see that in terms of the way it's maintained, it conveys that it's sacred to the people that use the building, the quality of the light and the facade and how it's kept up. And so I feel it conveys that in terms of the streetscape and the nighttime access and visibility to the neighborhood.
And this is another really kind of historic place. John can probably...
Well, it was a soul food restaurant. It was equivalent. It was more of a neighborhood restaurant than even Sylvia's in terms of just being corner place late at night. To come in, eat. They used it for the movie Precious. If you saw the movie Precious, is a restaurant scene. And they also, 30 Rock, there's some scenes where they were up here and did it. But it had this great old signage. It really dated back probably to the 50s, early 60s, and the sort of bright color that was incorporated into the facade, all of which now is gone. And so I feel like it has this kind of southern, like late night place to hang out that, is no longer part of the scene. It's now been documented through this image.
And then there were some other parts of Harlem that looked like this. This was on the Harlem River, right on 125th Street, and right pretty close to where I live right now. This is the triangle building that always looked amazing. So this is just an empty lot, which a lot of Harlem looked like this. There were these huge empty lots, and you can see the building has just been renovated. The first floor is still blocked off by plywood, and then this is a few years later. You can't really get that view anymore because there's a building occupying this lot now, but you can get a different view of this building. Now all done.
It's our little Flatiron building. It's Harlem's Flatiron.
Yeah, I actually remember looking at that building when it was completely in the state of disrepair and imagining myself living on the top floor, but
didn't happen.
It didn't happen. And here's another empty lot. This is an unbelievable tree. This is looking south from 135th Street, west of 8th Avenue. And here's the building that replaced that tree a few years later. This is a project by Davies, Brody and Bond, Strivers Row. I actually got to photograph for them. And then another project by Davies, Brody, Bond. This is the Harlem Children's Zone. So
this is 125th in Madison.
125th in Madison. And this was one of my late photographs that I did with film. And I remember standing on this street corner. So 125th Street is very busy, and lots of buses go on it. And Madison Avenue is the other street. Also has lots of buses on it. So this was late fall, rush hour traffic. I'm standing on top of the ladder with a really tall tripod, and we're trying to get this shot, and there's a bus after a bus after a bus after a bus right in front of me. And this is the only sheet of 4x5 film that I managed to get without a bus.
And I think people don't realize that people see a photograph or take a photograph. If you had all that back-to-back traffic, you would have never seen the ground plane entrance to the building. So it would just been this building hovering over traffic. So it's a real challenge to sort of allow the viewer to make this true connection to the entrance and the street. But again, this could be considered in that whole list of buildings that you've kind of photographed in terms of the street and the activity at night.
Yeah, it's really kind of, this is probably like 2005 or 2006. So I felt like, my early attempts of using a 4x5 camera and trying to do work at dusk kind of paid off, because I got to do all these other things at dusk. And then some of those empty lots starting to get construction fences around them. So the change was coming. This is another block. So this is a little earlier. This is also 2000 or 2001, same day as the Brownstone picture. But this is the first one that I did, actually. This is Lenox Avenue. I'm actually standing right in front of Lenox Lounge, looking the other way. 125th Street on the right side, 124th on the left. And
you have to realize in Harlem, when the market was really depressed, around main avenues with the commercial traffic, they would have commercial on the ground floor, but they totally gave up on the idea of trying to rent the upper floors in terms of having to maintain apartments and spaces for tenants. It was much more economically viable for them just to push the commercial on the ground level, and then they could start doing these big billboards, which brought in the revenue as well, and it wouldn't cost them anything. There's no plumbing or heat or anything you have to provide for the billboard. So you start to see the signage start to cover up the upper floors of these buildings.
And this was also kind of foreshadowing the change. This was Old Navy had just moved in, and Harlem USA Mall was just built on 8th Avenue, 125th Street, with Old Navy being one of the anchor tenants, which was one of the Rudy Giuliani's really proud moments to bring change to Harlem. And then from there, I just walked down, and this was the second picture of that day, and it kind of became clear to me that studying these whole blocks had a lot of value in it.
Well, here, this is a synagogue. This was Temple Israel of Harlem, built in 1906, and it was one of the largest German Jewish congregations in the neighborhoods where Richard Rogers went to synagogue, and a large apartment building to the left. And this is pretty much sort of the fabric that you see along. This is Lenox Avenue. Yep. in the 20s.
Yeah, all the three pictures are on Lenox Avenue. And Lenox Avenue yet again. So this is just north of 125th Street. Looking at the, again, State Office Building, and there's a Hotel Teresa back there. This was also another empty lot. This is a view. If Red Rooster, the fancy restaurant, existed back then, this would have been a view.
From its front door.
From the front door. If you were having brunch on Sunday there, this is what the view would be. And then change came there as well. There's a construction fence, and I kind of changed the shot. I thought, there's this view of the State Office Building that's never going to be possible again. So rather than doing this, I decided to do this, and then there it is. And then I just kind of continued the study of the whole block. And John, you know a little bit more about this than I do.
This is on 7th Avenue, and this building was built by Oscar Hammerstein's grandfather. Oscar Hammerstein, the grandfather, had a tobacco patent, and he allowed him to make a great deal of money, and he loved theater, and his first theater was on 125th Street, but he also built several properties in the neighborhood, investment properties. This was one of them. This was the Wilhelm apartment block between, I believe it's like 136
and 137th
Street on 7th Avenue.
And another sign of change. So this is again 125th Street, and this is to kind of try to tie this back to learning to see. I had gone out to photograph something else, and I just happened to be on 125th Street at this moment. This block that we're looking at is completely backlit, and it's really lit by the reflection, and the grid that's reflecting on it is the building where Bill Clinton has his office.
I always tell him, I said, it's basking in the glow of the Bill Clinton. It was across the street. And again, you can see those upper floors. They don't bother to occupy these upper floors. And you see you can't really get a big tenant back then, so you see all these small tenants taking up little segments of the ground floor space, a juice bar, a grocery place.
Yeah, the building where Bill Clinton has his office, to me at least, very visually unappealing. So I never pointed a camera to it. But this was another kind of interesting moment. Just walking around the neighborhood, I saw this little Parks Department building that had these handprints, and I thought, oh, the kids must have been really involved in this. Maybe I should take a picture of it. And so I started setting up, and these 4 kids came to me and said, "Oh, take a picture of us, take a picture of us." So here we are. Took a picture of them. It took a little while for me to explain to them how large format camera worked and how the exposures weren't that quick, and they couldn't really do all these fancy moves that they wanted to do. But luckily I had Polaroids, so I was able to show them that all these first attempts of them trying to be really fancy, produce just very blurry pictures. But I managed to get them to be still, and they were great, and they wanted to work more, so we found another shot, a playground with some hoops in the background and the projects in the background, and there they are, all following directions. It was really good. And then
it looks like an Ebony magazine shot. I was gonna say.
And it was cloudy that day, actually, so kind of my choice of lighting really for architecture wasn't there, so this kind of came really perfectly, and I just went with it. And after this, they were still interested in doing something, so I kind of started to look for another shot. I struggled, working with the 4x5. I had my head under a dark cloth, couldn't really see anything. Nothing was really working out, and then I get from under the dark cloth, and there they are on the rim. So I said, hold on there, and then I think some of you guys in this room have worked with me, and then hold on, that means not like a couple of seconds, but it does really meant like reconfiguring the whole camera to like put the long lens and the long bellows on, and it took a little while, but they were patient, and this is what we managed to get.
I still can't figure out how they got up there.
Me neither. I was under the dark cloth when they did it, so I don't know actually how they did it. And then, I felt like some of these efforts of me, like trying to photograph the neighborhood, paid off. So New York Times called in 2002 and said, "Can you photograph some of the Harlem architecture?" So that was one of the buildings that I did for them on 125th Street again. And this one was kind of interesting because the ground floor was really the project, and on 125th Street, ground floor can be, as you've seen in the building reflecting Bill Clinton's building, it could be really hard to see the ground floor from cars and double parked cars and buses and everything. So I decided going out at dawn was a much better idea, and I managed to convince people at the museum that they should allow me to, or make it possible for me to do that. And this is the same street, just a few buildings to the east, and this is how it looks during the day. So cars, street vendors. So this is kind of what I wanted to avoid. But this is also the that same building with the Old Navy sign. It's just around the corner. So Lenox Avenue right here, and this is 125th Street. And there's that same building. I decided dawn was probably my better time to do it. This is in 2004.
And it's one of the older buildings. This was from the 1890s or so on 125th Street. It's a very old building. Was a very old building.
Was, yep. Well, we'll see. We'll see that. And that morning, I actually set off to do this, and it was a friend of mine just recently saw this picture. It was like, oh, the two Alis. So it was really, I really wanted to avoid the distraction of the street. So doing it at dawn made sense. And if you can make out, there's a little person trying to walk across the street. So long exposures. And I also like this because it kind of puts it in context. There's a Hotel Teresa that shows up in some of the other pictures, and it's a very important landmark in Harlem.
It's where my parents honeymooned.
Wow. So the project kind of morphed into this documentation of the neighborhood because change has come, and here's that same block. This is where the Old Navy advertisement was. So now it's a construction site. Somebody just the middle buildings were already removed. These were in process. Then they're gone. And then everything's gone. It was kind of unfortunate time. I think this is about 2006 or 7, and I think the market really didn't allow anything to happen. And this is the way that looks actually a couple of months ago.
And there's rumors that it's going to be a Whole Food or something's coming.
There have been rumors for a while that there's going to be something there, but right now it's just some green grass, and as you can tell, the change is still happening. The median has widened Bloomberg signature trees are coming.
And I walked by there 2 weeks ago, and they had cut all this grass because they're doing survey, and it smelled like the country. You know, there's new mown grass. I said, that's not a smell you get in Harlem very often.
And then, just like I did about 12 years earlier, I just walked down, and here's the same brownstones right now, all occupied. The one on the very end is still unoccupied because it looks like construction has just been completed. The tree has grown quite a bit. There's new parking regulation on the street now. You can actually park there. And that brings us to our second topic, which is storytelling. So I had already mentioned that I think of architectural photography as really storytelling, and telling a story in picture, in pictures about architecture is really not that different from approaching any other visual project. I remember taking a class at City College in documentary photography and learning about how you would approach a project with 3 shots in mind. If you want to have a wide shot, a medium shot, and then and a close-up shot, and they use those the same 3 rules in cinema. So here's the I'm sorry.
Library?
So this is the Clinton Library, Little Rock, Arkansas. I was fortunate enough to actually get a assignment to photograph the building. The initiating client was the exhibit designer, and then architects got on board, and Architecture Magazine also said, "Oh, we would really like to have some pictures." So it was kind of a it was an assignment that kind of covered everything, basically, the interiors and the exteriors. So it seemed like a good one to try to illustrate this storytelling aspect. Plus, we have a little bit of a connection between Bill Clinton and Harlem. But in telling a story in pictures, so I mentioned the wide shot, the medium shot, and the close-up shot, and how, you know, and the documentary photographer would keep the same shots in mind. So in architectural photography, we're just looking for these elements that are used in designing the building, and we're composing our pictures using those elements. We're not looking for facial expressions or funny things that happen. I just want to tell a kind of a funny story that reflects a little bit about photographing design and architecture. A couple months ago, I was photographing something on 72nd Street. The building was facing north, and it was a really tight shot. So we got there kind of early and set up the camera. So building facing north doesn't get that much sun. In April, we were there well in advance, set up. We're just waiting for the shadow to kind of move away from our shot so we can do it. And we were across the street with a really long lens. We were starting with a really kind of a tight shot. And we're just standing there, and people are, it's a Saturday morning, probably at 8:30. People are walking by, and who are you guys waiting for? Who's coming? Who's coming?
Lindsay Lohan.
And I'm sorry, yeah.
Lindsay Lohan.
And, you know, we would tell them, and they would be like, okay. And, you know, it was really interesting because there were several encounters. One of the guys came to us, and we walking his dog, and said, "Are you guys paparazzi? Okay. Who's coming? Who are you waiting for?" And he literally did not believe us when we told him what we were doing. So I think, you know, all of us have a responsibility to kind of promote architecture and design and make that a little more mainstream. I think kind of try to steer away from this whole celebrity culture. So anyway, back to
Clinton's library.
back to
Speaking of
Clinton
celebrities.
Library. So here's our establishing shot, or wide shot. We're showing some context. There's a little downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. A bridge, which was kind of a conceptual piece for the building. We're also on the other bank of the river, which was a poor part of the town. So the whole idea about the bridge was connecting different parts of the town. And then we move in a little bit, and we try to take a look at the building a little better, and we get to a medium shot, which is really a shot that kind of shows a little bit of the context, but really allows us to have a really good understanding of the building.
And in sort of poetry, Bill Clinton saw his administration as the bridge to the 21st century, and you see that reflected a lot in some of the interior shots references. And so he's kind of really, the architects are really kind of reflecting on that other bridge. So even the structure to this front end, it looks like it could continue across the river in the same way the bridge structure of the train trestle would have activated the crossing.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that telling a story about the building, it's also one of the ideas that Ezra Stoller kind of pioneered. And working with Erica again, I get some of these stories of how her father was always he would sit after a shoot and look at film and kind of carefully study what's there and try to sort everything in the way you would approach and experience the building, and maybe crop things so that they really kind of support this narration of the building, so that every photograph becomes part of this story, and then also every photograph has strength on its own, strength and merit of its own as a photograph. So here's another way to see this building from the road. Actually, the car bridge, and then here we are approaching the building. And I really felt strongly that I needed to do this shot, and I set up in the middle of the approach to the library. So I had cars going both on left and right side of me, and this also took a little while. I was probably standing there for close to an hour, just waiting for all the cars to disappear, because getting to the library, this is a drop-off point. Oops, I don't need to use that. This is a drop-off point, so people would drop people off. So there's generally a lot of cars, and I just did not want cars in the picture, so I waited and waited and waited, and we kind of carefully steered traffic to one side or the other of me until we managed to get this shot. And going to do this project, I knew of another photographer actually whose work I was very familiar, Tim Hursley, whose work we actually saw on a previous presentation here. Who lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. So I knew that he had photographed the building as well. So I didn't really want to look at anything before I went there. I kind of wanted to go with open mind and open eyes and see what I see. And it was interesting to me. I spent so much time on this shot, and then when I got back, I looked at Polshek, which was called Polshek at that time. I looked at their site, and there was a rendering that looked exactly like this. So anyway, here we are. We get a little closer to the building.
And for a project like this, how long would you be shooting out there?
So this was actually 5 days. So 5 days, we were on a very strict schedule for all of the interiors that was given to us by the federal government. And then we kind of fit all the exteriors around it. And I think I had full last day just to do the exteriors. So here's some of the other parts that kind of surround the building. This is the archives building here, and then there's the detail shot. Right, so the detail shot really kind of isolates a few or even one architectural element, and really talks about material, or it talks to the relationship of the material.
The skin to the
skin.
interior.
And here we are. We're about to enter the building. You can see here the flags reflecting and some circular forms. And as you get into the building, you get close to the circular forms. And from the inside, you also get a nice view of the downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. And this is a main circulation area in this building. And you can see here the main space, which is where you get here. And in case there was any doubt that the bridge had anything to do with the concept here, it's spelled out here, building a bridge to the 21st century. So here we're just looking at the interior of the building, and we're looking to really describe this so that somebody who hasn't seen it can understand what's really happening here. So from the other side, and a little further back, and then we'll look at that same stair and the view that was created. So that old railroad bridge was really part of the design. It was not in use at the time. It was in the state of disrepair, but there were plans to turn it into possibly a pedestrian bridge. I'm not sure how that panned out. And then more of the inside. So because the client was also the exhibit designer, we were really interested in showing all of the exhibits and graphics and designs of the alcoves and panels. And this is the view of that main space at dusk, which you can never get with people because it's a 9-to-5 building, and when people are there, the lighting is completely different. But when people leave, this is about how it looks. So we have everything, and then this is some of the alcoves. So we look at the interiors in a very similar way. So we're moving from wider shots to medium shots to close-ups, and then this is the other part. We're back to that kind of a rotunda, the exact replica of Clinton-era Oval Office.
Well, there's some writer that talks about all the presidential libraries are like our tombs of the pharaohs. In each generation, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. If you look at Truman's, it's some modest little building, and now they're bigger and bigger.
And then we also are interested in seeing how people use this space. This is the replica of the cabinet room from Clinton era with some interactive displays that you could learn about the Clinton presidency.
Did you pose people for these pictures, or how would you?
No, these are not posed. This is actually 35 millimeter handheld. We're trying to just show the way people were using some of these interactive exhibits, which really wasn't possible with the large camera. And then you excuse me. Then you have an option of going out on the little terrace and really seeing the contrast between the intricate ironwork that happened when this bridge was built and the intricate aluminum and glass work that happened during the construction of the library. And that brings us to our third point, which is something that I've kind of known for a while, but Erica Stoller kind of put it in these words as her father kind of said it this way: you don't take a photograph, you make a photograph. And here's Ezra Stoller really illustrating.
Well, we were laughing earlier. We still can't figure out how he got up there. It's really pretty precarious.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody can get. I couldn't figure out.
Well, he's up there with those boys on the basketball hoop. They all have these little tricks of the trade. Tricks of the trade.
So, what does making of the photograph mean, and how is it different from taking of a photograph? Right? So, I think it's going to be especially important to think about that in today's terms, where everybody has multiple cameras, right? Everybody's phone has a camera. Everybody's cameraed out. But is pressing the button really taking a photograph? And I really think it's not. And I think making of the photograph is different, because it really has three elements to it, and those are preparation, work on site, and post-production. So when one is really able to fully utilize all three, then I think we can get a photograph.
But I think that's the challenge. Do you think of like Ezra Stroller or Stanley Kubrick, starting with Life magazine or whatever? They took a picture. They had a story to tell. They went back to an editor. It was a whole process before that picture went to the public realm. So it's like a writer. There's an editor, and I think now, because everybody can have a blog, and everybody thinks they can write. Everybody thinks they can take a picture, and who's to say they can't? Because it goes right from whatever they think or write or do into the public realm. And so you read people's blogs, it just goes on and on and on. It's just like this point of view without this kind of sense of who is my audience, how will I edit it, what I do. So I think that is the challenge in the 21st century, is like there is a rigor to doing things really well, and somebody has to set a kind of standard about what that is and how that's going to come in the future. I'm not sure. I leave it to others to.
But we had like a very recent example of that. I was photographing an exhibit. We'll see some of those pictures later in a little loop. And the person came to me and said, I'm writing a blog. Could I have some of your pictures? And I said, well, we'll talk to the designers if they're okay with you using their pictures. And she followed through. She got in touch with us. She said, well, can I look at these pictures? Well, I really first had to sort everything out so we can show something to the client, and we couldn't really do anything until they approved it. And then she was still interested, and we were at that point. We passed the preparation stage and site work stage, but we haven't actually gotten and completed the post-production stage, which is really important, especially in the interior pictures. And she decided to wait for our client to place their order and for us to do the post-production on the pictures. And her blog post was a couple of weeks late, but I think she was, from reading the post, I think she was glad that she waited, rather than publishing pictures that she would have taken with the iPhone while walking around the space. So I'm really glad that there are people that are patient. So I was going to tell kind of a funny story here. This is me in 2002 in St. Petersburg, Florida. Sometimes I get asked by people, when can you do it? And it's really all relative. This assignment came to us in December. So in December, a lot of architectural photography doesn't really happen because Christmas decorations go up, and nobody really wants to see their project with Christmas decorations. So, it kind of slows down. And it was a Thursday afternoon. I just left my apartment. I was going downtown, walking to the subway, and Erica calls, and she says, People magazine called. They have this story they're working on about a Christmas display, of all things, down in St. Petersburg. Are you interested in doing it? I said, sure. When do they need this? Well, they need film on Monday. This is Thursday. This is 2002. I didn't even own a digital camera of any sort back then. So, let me make a U-turn and go back to my house, and then we can figure this out. So we did. I was on the first flight out on Friday morning, going to St. Petersburg. And just in case, they told us, if you can't get a flight to come back to bring us film on Monday morning, here's the number to call, and they'll bring the film to us. Don't worry. So it was going to be a story of 3 places. There was another photographer that was working on another 2, and they lost some funding, and it actually turned out to be just 1 picture and 1 page, and this was the story. So we managed to do it. The time to shoot was again at dusk, and we got there Friday midday, and we had the opportunity to work at dusk on Friday evening, and then at dawn on Saturday, and then at dusk on Saturday. And I managed to pull another shot off on Sunday at dusk and make it to the airport, and get the film processed and deliver on Monday. And
this is a temporary structure for the holidays. What's
gosh, this was somebody's house. Probably better not to go into details that I learned about. But anyway, it was just a crazy Christmas display. This person had like helpers, and they would do this display. It would take them 4 months to put it up and 4 months to take it down. So there was like an 8-month venture for them. There were tour buses coming in. They had a collection box to help them pay their electricity bills.
At first I thought maybe it was a mafia don or something, but if they have a collection box, it was.
No, it was just somebody who was very enthusiastic about this thing. So anyway, making of a photograph. So here's an interior photograph. This is a final image that we delivered to the client. This is a little gallery that was really an art consulting business. They needed this shot for an ad, and I've worked with this gallery quite a bit. We've photographed a lot of paintings for them, which was a lot of fun. So anyway, I wanted to kind of illustrate or contrast this final shot with something that came right out of camera. When I first went to see the space a few days before our shoot. This is just what really came out of the camera. And then I just kind of made it look a little better so that I can talk to our art director in a little more informed way. So I did a bunch of different shots, and we kind of selected this one as the most important one. And then here we are at the day of the shoot. We're starting to work with this. Here's Drew. He's our art director. And most of these are going to be just kind of unprocessed camera files. But I think they're kind of going to be good to illustrate what kind of goes into making of an interior photograph in this case.
So if you take pictures, you can download them onto the computer, and he can look at them, or how would you recommend?
He's actually looking at something else. He's got our little scouting shots here, and we're shooting directly into the computer. So I'm actually looking at this on the computer. And the gallery had already kind of selected their pieces of art that they wanted to feature. So it was really up to us to figure out how do we want this space to look like. And I kind of want to use this. So this was a tough one also, because most shoots that I do, I erase all these files, and for some reason I had these, and I thought it would be also a good example. So here's us moving stuff around. You can see flowers arrived. We took away this huge barrier here to kind of open up the space. There it is, and then there's a table good long ways or short ways. And what about the foreground? I remember, another influence of mine, Peter Aaron, who also works with us, talking about how incredibly difficult it is to get a foreground to look good, and how easy comparing to that it is to just kind of get the middle and the background to look good. And how foreground is usually a struggle, and this is kind of a good example of it. And you can see how many iterations of it we had.
Are the clients ever engaged in the shoots? Do they come in and they see you taking something down or moving something around?
So in this case, we had the person who was designing the ad, who was kind of art directing, and the gallery owner was not around. He trusted us that we were going to do justice to his space. But it really varies. Sometimes clients are really involved. Sometimes they're not. And here we are continue. So there's a ton of frames. So I like to say that this also becomes like a little stage set. And just like when photographing exteriors, we're composing our picture from these architectural elements. When we photograph interiors, we actually get to move stuff. And I think, back to Ezra Stoller, who we know now there are established standards to which architectural photography is done. Through some other photographers, I've heard that interior photography is 90% moving of the furniture and 10% everything else. So I think this example illustrates that. But we're just very carefully considering that here's Mike with our target and color checker, which really then helps our Photoshop people match the color, because these are all known colors. And we're back there as well. And then we do some lighter exposures, some darker exposures. So we make sure that we have all the highlights and all the shadows. And there's Mike, so we do some lighting, and the way we do it most of the times these days is with this portable strobe. And we just light certain areas, and then that gets painted in post-production. So.
And who would do the photoshopping? Would you do it, or are there this labs?
No, we have somebody that we work with that does this for us, and I can do some basic things in Photoshop, but I much more enjoy being on site and figuring these things out than looking at the computer. So we'll light all these things, and then we decided to, the sculpture didn't actually end up in the place where we wanted it, so we decided we needed to move the sculpture. We've fixed the curtains a little bit, we'll do a couple more exposures. And then just in case, we spend a lot of time on this foreground, but just in case we wanted to take something out, we did a shot without anything in the foreground. And then we're back to the original shot, and then we actually did decide that rather than having, I think it was 4 books in our original setup, we decided to take 2 out. And this is what we really ended up with.
Did they sell all the art? Did it work?
Oh, I'm not sure. But they're doing well, so.
And this would be a day shoot, you would say, half a day, whole day?
Yeah, so what we did that day, we worked 9 to 6. I think Mike probably remembers even better. We did this shot and another tighter shot of just this area, which went a lot faster because everything was already set up and we wanted some continuity. And then we reconfigured the entire space. Everything got taken out, and we set up a space to photograph some of the paintings that were also going into the ad. So from 9 to 6, we did 2 interiors and 10 paintings, one of which was really gigantic. But most other ones were about that size, I think. So that's making of the photograph. And I also kind of wanted to use this example to kind of segue to the next one, which is going to be perception of space. For the interior space, removing that piece of furniture in the foreground and kind of opening up the space kind of revealed the entire room to the camera. And that was really necessary because the way we perceive space is not really by walking into a room with a frame with closed eyes and a frame in front of our face and then opening our eyes, right? So we walk around, we look around, we touch things, we feel things, And our brain kind of puts all that together, and once you put the camera down, it just a lot of times doesn't look anything like what you experience. So the idea is really to kind of show the experience rather than a literal representation of the space.
You kind of define that when you talk about as a stoller sitting down and thinking about the shot from the outside. So do you do that when you go to a space? Do you sit and kind of look at it before you even start taking any pictures to think about the space?
Most of the times what I do is I like to visit the space, and digital technology has made this a lot easier. I will bring the camera and I will just take pictures, actually. And at that point, just like the first one that you've seen here, I just point the camera and then I press the button. And I do that many times, just very quickly looking at things. And then I go back to the studio, and then I put that on the computer and I look at it carefully and I select what looks better.
Just sort of like a sketchbook in a way.
That's exactly right. I call those sketches.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of tough to show the client because they don't look that great, because it's just taking a picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't really do that. But most of the times I do, and I get some input from the client. But it's really kind of my thinking process. And it is very similar to architecture school. I mean, I still carry a sketchbook in my bag. After we select those views, then the selected ones get attention.
Mm-hmm.
So the last point that I would like to talk about is perception of space. And as we've already seen the interior example, here's the exterior example. So this is the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens project by Weissman Freddy that I photographed last year. But it was ready after everything in the garden had already bloomed. So they wanted to see some pictures with cherry blossoms. So I went back, and it turned out Sunday was a really good day. So I said, you know what? I know we planned to do this on Wednesday, but Wednesday doesn't look as good, and we better do it while it's good, because when it rains, it's gonna be all gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there on Sunday, and it was just a perfect day. It was sunny and beautiful, and it felt like the whole Brooklyn was at Botanic Gardens. So this is just one exposure. The place was just swarming with people.
This is like their visitor center? Or
this is the new visitor center at the Botanic Gardens. So here's another view of that, and you can see how many people visited the garden that day. And this is actually very few people, but the same day. And then we have this picture from the roof, except that this picture from the roof, we couldn't do that Sunday because this is the roof of a school, and you really can't get on into a school, let alone the roof on a Sunday. So what do we do? Is it really going to look the same on a weekday? This is a picture from my iPhone. While we were shooting those other shots in the back, I popped to the front, and there was a line that you couldn't see the end of. There were so many people. But when we finally actually got access to the school, there wasn't that many people. It was a weekday. So what does one do? I mean, what's proper? So we sit there and we look for some good people, and there are some good people here and maybe here, and then there's some deliveries happening. Maybe there's some other good people right there. Oh, and then I lucked out. I got a school group, a lot of people, but I got a delivery van as well. Some group completely random crossed the street, and there they all are. They looked good, and there's somebody with a stroller that looked good too, and then somebody with the bicycle. You gotta have somebody with a bicycle these days. So then we put all
Bloomberg. That's your Bloomberg shot.
That's my Bloomberg shot. Yeah, they don't have a bike lane there. We better not show it to them. So this is what we kind of ended up with, and it really in my mind, works well with the other shots. And if I didn't tell you guys that I did this, I don't know that anybody would really be able to tell because the other place was so populated and this was not. So I think in a way we're kind of trying to show the way, or I'm trying to show the way I perceive this space. And I think, I don't know if you would call this cheating or not, but a little bit of it is maybe okay.
Well, it all actually happened. It just didn't
Well,
happen.
it all happened, that's right. So yeah, this was our last one. And I think we're gonna open the floor for a few questions. I'm supposed to get out of here. And then, Sarah, can you help us? Oh, this, okay. So we'll just play some pictures so that we have something to look at, but we'll open the floor to questions.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Now, I know we have a lot of photography people in the audience and some photography lovers, so we welcome questions. Anybody have
If
questions?
anyone has a question, please wait for the microphone. I'll bring it over to you.
Somebody must have a question. Now, where is this? I love this little building.
So this is a pier down on the west side on Hudson River, just north of Battery Park City. A project by WXY, Claire Weiss and Marquez, and this is the IAC building.
This is Frank Gehry, I think.
Yep.
Is the
But we would really encourage some questions.
yeah. In the back, there's a gentleman in the back.
1 second.
Sorry, the hardest one to get to. You mentioned earlier that you work with some folks that do some Photoshop work with you. And I'm wondering, as the photographer, when you hand off a file to somebody to do some post-processing, what that dialogue is like, the back and forth between you and whoever's sort of doing touching up or painting in whatever processes you were describing earlier.
That's a good question. But so the way I work is after the shoot, I will create a little preliminary image. And in the example of Botanic Gardens, I will actually go in and pick all those people for the preliminary image, so that the client can see what I'm thinking and they can say, yes, we like it, or no, we don't like it, we would like something different, or and that goes to our Photoshop person. And we work together for a number of years now, so we have pretty good understanding of or she has pretty good understanding of what I want, and I have a pretty good understanding of what she can do to the file. And this is really so I stay involved in the process. I'm not, pressing the mouse and moving the pixels, but I do stay involved in the process. That's really no different than what we used to do, having a lab. It was very important back in film days to have a lab that was really reliable and could produce really high quality images.
Don't you think that's also an aspect of New York? You kind of build a team of people that kind of work together in relationships over time. You can kind of count on a certain quality and a certain eye in the people that you work with.
It is exactly. I mean, architecture is very kind of a collaborative process, and I think architectural photography is as well. So it's collaboration with the architect to kind of learn about the project and be able to.
This is just quickly. This is a great.
So that's Botanic Gardens.
That was in.
Yep, that's from last year. After we missed all the flowers because everything bloomed much earlier last year. Does that answer?
I'm looking at this, and I remember the Ezra Stoller period, the 1670s, and the sculptural sense and the graphic sense of the images, and it's great to see it's new to this generation, but I can see in the furniture and everything this repeat of this very 60s, 70s sense of color and graphic and form.
Does that satisfy or answer the question?
In here?
Who did the cameras? How many cameras were there?
How many cameras do you have? Quite a few, but it's really not the camera. It's really the lens. I'm much less picky about the camera, although I am picky and everything. But I'm really picky about the lenses, because the lens is really what makes the picture, and the lens is really directly related to the perspective that you're gonna get in the picture. So having a good assortment of lenses and then being able to use those on site is very important. I still remember when I assisted Paul Warshall, I remember this one shoot. I actually can't remember what shoot it was, but I remember us we were working with a 4x5, so it's not really fast that you can move, but we moved pretty fast. We did 3 shots, and he said, "Albert, we did these 3 shots with the same lens. Remind me, next shot we have to do with a different lens." And it's really not just because we like to change lenses or use all of our gear. It's because that different lens is actually going to have a different perspective. And when using different lenses and creating these images that have different perspective, you can create a different rhythm to the whole story about the piece of architecture.
It was very interesting. Even setting up for this, now Albert looked at one of the old, this goes up online and you can see the talk. And he looked at it and he said, "Well, John, I think there's going to be a problem with the light in the background here." And then we had some emails back and forth and kind of said what we could or couldn't do. And he says, "Well, but I think if you do this, could you move the room, lay out the room around? Well, we could do paper at the window, but we didn't have paper." "Oh, I have paper." He was prepared. The poles are his, the paper is his. But that whole sense of that kind of provincial sense of like knowing light, kind of projecting what the light would do, what the space was going to be like, even before you were even here, I was impressed, I have to say.
Thank you.
That you were gauging all of that.
It was last presentation that I actually wasn't able to see, but I watched it on YouTube, and Jack Travis, whom I know, and I had said at the end, "Oh, you should look at this photograph of my screen, on the computer screen rather than up on a big screen, and it looks much better here." And at that time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?"
I'm all pictures.
So I'm all pictures. So I quickly emailed Sarah from Cooper Hewitt. What can we do? How about this? How about this? And so I'm actually, thank you, Cooper Hewitt. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Cooper Hewitt, for allowing the transformation.
Thank you. Not a professional photographer, so this may be a really silly question, but I think we all know what's happened in the age of digital photography, the immediacy and the ability to Photoshop and everything, but what have we lost now that we don't have film, or that there's so few places that can, is there something that's been lost from your point of view? The artistry of it, or something?
I think about that. I don't know that I have a straight answer to it. I think one thing that's lost is, as you mentioned, the artistry, and but I think it's also that it's really just the care that had to be put in. For example, that children's zone. That one sheet of film that had no buses in it. That one really had to count. So if that one wasn't right, I would have had to go back there and stand on that street corner again. So I think about that, and the way I like to work with a digital camera is fairly similar to the film camera. I like to slow down, and I like to study the subject, and I like to as Wayne put it very early in my career, learn to see and really give the subject as much care as possible so that reads as well as the architects intended it to read. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure where the whole thing is going to go. There are some of my colleagues here that probably struggle with the same question. I mean, where do you process film now? I used to work with Ben Diep at Hong Color, and this is where most of us architectural photographers used to go. And I was kind of thinking about it last night. It was kind of Facebook before there was Facebook. So you would meet all other architectural photographers and kind of chat and go have coffee with, and look at what you're doing and maybe look at what other people are doing. And that's kind of lost now. I don't know. We'll have to see where it all goes.
And I think what's so interesting among many things in your presentation was that it's almost like the digital, everybody can take a picture and it's like you almost don't miss anything, and yet because you were there and you had to wait for the buses and the serendipity of a moment that you might never have because everybody's rushing to take all these instant photos. I mean, that's something I hadn't actually thought about until I saw how your craftsmanship put this through. So it was interesting.
Well, and everybody, think about when you first came to New York and you had your little Instamatic camera or whatever, and you came out of the subway, you go, oh, a tall building. Oh, a tall building. And then you got home, you go, they all look the same. Because you're doing something that's almost a reflex action, as opposed to standing back and go, what is the tallest building that's going to really tell me what New York looks like, or those kind of things. So I do think it's the contemplation and the sense of work and what am I trying to capture here, to think a little bit about it and not think that one snapshot's going to get what was in your head. Because even when I walk around as an architect traveling around, I stopped taking a camera just so I'll look more, because I feel like I used to go take the picture and not look as well at the details in the sense of how spaces worked in the way I would when I just drew or just sat and contemplated the space. There's a gentleman that's...
Albert, I wanted to ask you, I think I know the answer, but in the beginning you showed us photographs of the documents of Harlem. And towards the end, you showed us photographs that were done for a client. Could you talk about your mindset and how you approach the two different ways of shooting, or is there? For instance, in the last photograph, you showed us this montage, okay? Are you going to do that with documentary work?
I'm probably not allowed to do that with documentary work. No, you. It's different and similar in some ways. Telling a story about a piece of architecture and working with the client, it's really our aim is to really show this piece of architecture the way the architects have intended it to be used. Working on my own personal project is quite a bit different, because I'm just free to just go and look and see what's visually interesting to me. But I think what's similar for both is that a similar care of looking and studying the subject goes into both. So in that way, they're not different, but in some of the other ways, they are. And if you look at Ezra Stoller's work, Ezra really never thought of himself as an artist. He was always focused on telling a story about the piece of architecture, and now we're looking at those photographs with a different eye.
But he might not saw himself as an artist, but he really has the eye of his time. And even as we talk about the technology changes, whatever, the next generation is going to have an eye for the world through whatever equipment they're looking through and all of that. And someone will hone it into an art. Even Vecerka was looking at it on technical ways and trying to do this or that. In the end, he brought an art to how he took those photographs that really reverberate to that time period. And I try not to bemoan living in Harlem and sensing that it's always changing. New York is always changing. That's what brought us here. And if anything, I want out of Harlem, like these talks, I want Harlem to have the energy that made people want to be here, and not so much about the property value or the other things, but the fact that you wanted to be here because it was a special place and a special energy. And I feel like the really great people who do anything have that level of energy. There's a kind of focus and energy that takes it to the art form.
We have one last question from this gentleman here.
Well, there's two here. We'll take two. He's right in back. We'll take.
Do you use pictorial rules? That is, do you use rules like 1/3 foreground, 2/3 sky, or half and half sky? Do you compose by using those classical rules or not, or you just disregard them?
Well, I have them in the back of my mind, right? Every photographer always talks about the rule of thirds and how you place certain, people, right? You don't place a person like right smack in the center of the picture, but in left third or right third. So the frame is divided in thirds vertically and horizontally. It's certainly something that's on my mind, although in architectural photography, it's harder to actually follow that rule. But the rule that I really follow is really the proportion. I will look at, what is the, the building size, how does the building actually fit in the frame? And I'll look how much of the frame it does, how much ground does it need? Is it like the half of the building width? Do I get the entire building width on the sky, or what do I get on the sides? So it's not that basic photography rule, but it is really proportions.
Just a quick question. One of your last series that you had done is from pencils to pixels, the exhibition that's downtown.
Yep.
When you were photographing that show, did you find any similarities between you going from film to digital as you walked around the exhibit?
I'm not really sure. The exhibit was really amazing in the ways that it showed the 100 years of typography and the ways the typeface was designed 100 years ago, and the way it's designed now. And you can think of some parallels between that and photography. And
Well, there was a stage of film when type was set up film.
Yep.
From metal to film, and then digital.
I kind of think of the computer and all. It's like a movie because you're seeing things with light passing through it. So the images on the screen are never the same as what we see projected, or there's something about this illuminated image that's very different from a print that's got no light passing through it. It's on a surface. So I think when you look at the computer, you're always looking at light. You're always making these judgments about light in ways that you don't in terms of like a surface print on a piece of material.
But I think that maybe the answer to the question is that there are all these different tools that we've had, 100 years ago and in between and now, and I think the similarity is that we all strive to achieve, something that's close to perfection, right? So we all give our subjects, whether it's a photograph or the designing a letter A in Helvetica, we give it tremendous amount of thought and attention, and we're learning to see this subject that's in front of us, whether it's a letter or a photograph or a piece of furniture or any piece of architecture. And I think that's something that will hopefully remain with new tools that are coming.
Well, and we're always referencing the past. So, like in movies, I mean, the Nickelodeon, they were just flipping cards, and someone would pose with their hand here, their hand here, their hand there. And when they flipped the Nickelodeon, the movement of those cards made you think that hand moved. Next, you know, they had the sprockets in the film, and they could actually show much more even motion, much more poetic motion. But in every way, they're coming back and referencing life experience or a life image or life's history, even as they go forward. So even though they're doing it with digital, they're still looking. You're still looking at photographs that were, you know, daguerreotypes. You're looking at, you know, referencing images that were done with other technology, but it still is about capturing life and space. Well, young lady, we'll let you have the last question. You'll have the last word. Well, different architects did the buildings, but he took all the photographs. You do. You're a taxpayer. You don't. Do you pay taxes yet? Actually, well, it belongs to the nation. It's every president, the nation puts up money. So him and a large funder actually gets some of its government money, but some of it's private donations. So it belongs to the country, though.
But the architect was Polshek Partnership back then, and any architects right now.
Well, thank everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.